In this video, I am going to show you how to make a pamphlet stitch book. I'm going to make mine very boring. I don't have a cover for mine. I just want to teach you how to do the stitch on this so you get a good sense of that. And this will be fairly quick. So the paper I'm using is Mohawk 24-pound paper. It's just plain white. I know that the grain runs this way, but I'm going to disregard prior advice I've given, and I'm going to make my book this way because this seems like a better size book. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to fold my paper in half. Now, I don't want to fold each paper individually in half because I want my exterior paper to wrap around the fold. And I'm going to show you what I mean by that here in just a minute. I'm going to take my time trying to make sure that these line up as best they can. I'm using 5 sheets of paper, which is kind of the max you can use for this stitch or for this binding style. It's a little bit tricky to get things to line up. I like to press in the middle and outwards. And then once I've got my initial fold, then I use my bone folder, or I can use a pencil, like anything with a hard edge, and make my crease sharper. So something you'll notice right away is that no matter how carefully you try to line all of your pieces of paper up, they're always going to be a little bit out of whack. That's because the paper that goes around the fold, right, especially these 2 end pieces, have a longer area to travel than the pieces in the middle. Once you have created a folded chunk like this, or a folio, don't rearrange the pages. These pages have settled into place with their crease. If I, for instance, tried to take this outside one and put it in the middle, it's gonna, you guys see how one of them kind of sticks out awkwardly now? Don't do that. Just kind of leave them in the order you crease them. And I think this will, even though the grain is the wrong direction, I think this is kind of a respectable size pamphlet. So I've got this folded, I have this nice crease. Now I have to mark where I want to sew my binding. I have a couple different ways of doing this. The first, I need 3 holes to sew through. The first way I could determine where to put my holes or where to punch them with either my awl or my nail would be I could get out my ruler and I could divide this evenly, right? I could make a middle spot because I always want to have one in the middle, and then I could divide this half evenly. I could divide this half evenly. That would be fine. I can do that. But there's also a much easier way of doing this that doesn't require a ruler. And that is to have a strip of paper that is the same length, right, as your spine. What I can do is I can take this, I can fold it in half. I want to be really careful on this one to fold it in half. Right, so I have my middle crease, and then I can fold into the middle. Fold into the middle. And I'm going to, let me actually mark this real quick. I also want to make sure that I mark my book's top. And so now I have a guide for where I can place my punches. It's really important to get into a good habit of marking the top of whatever guide you have and the top of your book. It's not quite as important with something like this where we're going to punch these 3 holes and we'll be done with it. But if you are making a more complex book with maybe multiple folios, you don't want to suddenly have your book get turned around and then have your holes line up in a slightly different pattern. Even though this is quite easy, things can still go wrong pretty quickly. So it's good to know. It's good to know and make sure things line up all the time. Now, because I don't like holding this all in place, I'm going to take my pencil, not my pen, my pencil, something erasable, and I'm going to mark a dot at all these places. And now I know where I'm going to sew. If you're like me and you have a tapestry needle that is quite blunt, you can use your nail or your awl and just gently punch through. If you have a little bit, see, it's going to punch through here. If you have a sharper needle, you can probably actually just sew through the paper, but my needle is quite blunt, so I'm going to go ahead and do this. Now, I'm making sure that I'm not punching my finger. I'm only sending the tip of the nail through. I'm not punching like massive holes. Ideally, I would have gone straight through the crease, but I kind of missed my mark on a couple of these, and that's okay. There's no going back at this point, so I'm going to live with it. And then I can thread my needle, and I can put this pamphlet together. So I'm just using embroidery floss, nothing fancy. I like to moisten the end of the embroidery floss, right? Don't stick things in your mouths, but if you have a cup of water or something, sometimes it helps. Dang, I knew I should have pre-threaded this. There we go. And then I don't want to tie a knot at the end of this because it's just going to be more bulk to pull through my binding. So I'm going to kind of leave this as is. And then I'm going to make a figure 8 with my embroidery floss. So I'm going to go through the middle. I'm going to leave kind of a hefty tail. I'm on the outside. I'm going to come back in. Now, I don't want to pull my tail through, so I'm going to hold it. You guys can see I've got this nice green strip there. Then so my needle's on the inside, so I can go back out through the middle. I'm still kind of holding on to the tail because I don't want it to pull through. Then I'm on the outside, so I'm going to go back in. I'm going to pull this. I'm going to make sure that my tension is nice here. I don't need it, so tight that it's like a stranglehold or anything, but I do want to make sure that this is at least taut. And then I'm going to trim a little bit of my excess. I gave myself a little bit too much embroidery floss, but that's okay. And then I'm going to tie a knot. And ideally, I want my knot to line up more or less over the center, although it's okay if you put it somewhere else too. It just looks kind of nice when everything's symmetrical. So to do this, I'm going to do a square knot. Oh, which one did I do? So to do a square knot, you can go left over right and under. Then I did left before, so I go right over left and under. And then, so you guys see there's this nice square knot, this even tension. I like to make sure that I can nudge my knot into place. So sometimes I like to hold a needle. This is kind of like the equivalent of holding your finger over the ribbon during wrapping Christmas presents or whatever. And I'm going to kind of nose that into place, pull it taut, and then I can cut my tails back. I don't want to cut them close because then my knot will unravel, but I just like to cut them so that they're even. And voila, a pamphlet stitch book. I'm going to come in. Clean that up, and I have a very simple sewn binding book.